Working through your avoidance patterns really requires a lot of intentional surrendering to your own self, because especially if you're an intellectual, every time that you feel something, your thoughts might challenge your own feelings, because you might be judging yourself even automatically, like immediately. If your brain seems to judge your emotions as not good enough, not wise enough, and somehow it's not evolved enough, where you expect yourself to be better than that, right? Because a lot of the ways that we experience our raw emotions sometimes are we feel things very like intensely, right? And like obviously as intellectual people, we can develop things like grace and patience and understanding, and we then develop a skill to simmer it down a little bit, right? And that is a very important part of human emotional intelligence, yes. But when you do too much of that intellectualization and just observing your thoughts and feelings as opposed to letting yourself fully surrender to what you really feel, you end up becoming disconnected because you're not validating your feelings enough, right? And this is like a very thin line, because obviously you have to maintain the balance between feeling your feelings and validating how you really feel and not acting on it, right? And being able to see different perspectives and being able to hone that so you don't make impulsive decisions based on that feeling. So there's all types of work that you do that's part of emotional maturity. But I guess I'm reminding you that as someone currently actively working on my emotional avoidance, which clearly I have developed this as a trauma response over time, is I really have to be like radically and 100% honest about what I really feel. And sometimes that is hard for me because I experience things very, very intensely, like very intensely. My emotions are very intense. A lot of them, not all of them. Like I can also be very chill, but at the baseline, I am someone who experiences feelings very intensely. And proactively healing my avoidance means like leaning into that and surrendering into that. And now what's happening is it's making me go back to certain situations where with relationships where I felt certain things and it didn't feel right? But then like instead of leaning into how I really feel and validating myself through it, because sometimes your intuition expresses itself through your intense emotions, which is why sometimes you play yourself if you avoid your emotions too much, because then you're avoiding something that could be warning you. You're avoiding something that's here to guide you away from what you should step away from, because you don't want to feel your emotions. Then you're ignoring the warning from higher wisdom. Anyways, going back to my point, there are some things that I find myself regretting right now, is that those incidents where I didn't validate my intense anxious feelings, because that was me avoiding my feelings, and then that made me step into situations or prolonged situations that I should have stepped away from because my emotions were telling me something unsafe, right? So I should have, or unsafe or disrespected or invalidated or whatever, and it was my responsibility to step away, but I didn't. I avoided that because intellectually I made a different conclusion, or rather I let things simmer down a little bit and be like, give it grace, give it patience, have a different perspective. So when I used intellect to battle my intense emotions, I ended up, I don't want to say I did something, but it's like I just ended up staying in a situation where now looking back, I stayed longer than I should have. And so like I'm experiencing like that retroactive regret, and it's making me feel very uncomfortable. Like I am very uncomfortable like processing all these emotions, because it's like whatever I avoided, I never got to avoid it because it stayed in my body, so it's in my system. So essentially I am just paying for the consequences of avoiding my emotions later, right? But I'm choosing to do that. But this is just proof, right? Because now I'm kind of going back to my memory lane and replaying the times where I ignored my emotions. But clearly, ignoring only led to me doing things that weren't aligned for me. And now I find myself retroactively regretting anyway. And that's another thing, right? Intellectually or even spiritually, and people talk about it all the time, that, don't regret anything in life, right? Just keep living your life. But I actually now think it's important to fully recognize regret, and regret takes many different forms. But I think people need to feel regret to account themselves for the consequences that they're paying for, that they're paying with. Because that is the consequence of you not being fully honest with yourself. And I think that I deserve to feel this right now. I deserve to feel regret. And I actually encourage everyone to let themselves experience regret. Because what else is this feeling? Like, it's more regret than anger, And it's gonna make you feel uncomfortable, and that's why you avoid it. That's why you don't even want to acknowledge the things that you did wrong or you could have done better. But instead of intellectualizing that, fully feel the feelings of it. And I'm saying that as someone who would generally dismiss or avoid. And yeah, because I'm telling you right now, if you don't feel it, it's going to manifest itself in other ways. I think that's why people I know people develop diseases or autoimmune diseases, hormonal issues, because you don't let yourself be honest. You don't let yourself metabolize these emotions. Because like I said, for me, I'm feeling regret because I'm retroactively thinking about the times where I avoided my emotions, and that led me to make decisions that weren't the best. But now I'm only retroactively acknowledging that, and now I'm retroactively feeling the regret of it all. But it's in the system, right? So I'm not creating the feeling of regret. It was just in me. I'm just letting myself finally feel it. So it's like healing, right? Healing just later, right? That's why I say your healing always matters. And it's never too late to retroactively claim authenticity over your life. Not that you were fake before. You were always doing what was best, or what you thought was the best. But that's part of human experience. That's part of us being human, is you think you're doing what's best, and then you realize it wasn't best, and then you change your ways. That's what it means to be human. You live and learn, and you keep growing and keep striving to evolve yourself. Because that's the thing about human consciousness, is you can always do better. Even when you fuck up, you can always do better. But that takes radical responsibility over yourself and accountability, and definitely not avoidance. You have to allow yourself to feel difficult feelings, and allow yourself to feel things you don't want to feel, like regret.